Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. Mr. Silver, do you think there is any such thing as overregulation?
Oh, sure there is. As I've said, as I just said in response to Mr. Carney's question, I think the three items that Mr. Maranka emphasized in his opening testimony are items where, on the surface, would appear to be reasonable changes that Congress should take a look at.
But just, do you think there's such a thing as overregulation? Just kind of a yes or no would save us both a lot of time, and I'm running out of time.
I think I just said yes.
Well, yes sounds a whole lot better than I think I just said yes, but thank you very much. Mr. Livingston, do you think there's such a thing as overregulation?
Yes, but I think the critical thing is not the amount of regulation, it's whether they're good regulations or bad regulations.
Give me an example of bad overregulation.
It's not bad overregulation, it's bad regulation. It's not, the question is not the number of regulations, it's whether they're smart regulations.
So you don't think there's such a thing as bad overregulation?
There's bad regulation, and if you have too much of that, that's bad overregulation.
So that's a yes.
If I understand the question, for what I think you're asking me, I'm not trying to play with semantics here. I'm really trying to actually make a point that the problem is whether these are good regulations or not the sheer number of regulations.
But I just want to
overregulation is a numerical thing.
Reclaim my time. I just want to qualify your comments. I mean, we've had people come in here to talk about overregulation and never acknowledged in their written or oral testimony that there was such a thing as overregulation. They always just talked about what happens if there's underregulation. But I think every member of this committee has been convinced over the past couple of years' testimony that there is significant overregulation. And I can assure you, despite your inference to the contrary, there's not a single member on either side of the aisle in this committee ever that wants to harm American families. I think every member here wants the same thing. They want the American dream to be available for everybody in this country. We do have differences over how to get there occasionally, but nobody's trying to harm the American family, I can assure you.
I'm
as
glad
to the
hear
handling,
that, but
it's my time.
That's what this bill will do.
Excuse me, you're out of order. As to the handling of loans, my local community banker, where I bank, had to fail to renew a loan for businessman because regulators said if you renew this loan, modify this loan, it automatically goes on non-accrual, so he couldn't do that, which would cost his bank significant losses. So, of course, the guy became delinquent in his home loan and just came in and put the keys on the bank president's desk and said, it's yours, I can't do it. And the bank president said, no, you don't, no. They didn't want a house back that's empty. They didn't want to ruin the neighborhood values. He hung in there with the guy until he got a realtor to sell it for him and did the best possible in that instance. And I beg to differ with some of the other opinions expressed that big banks have a greater ability to do this. They're less willing to do it. The community banks obviously are much more inclined to give that personal attention to individual homeowners or individual business people. With the exception of the Veterans Administration, which has a loss ratio of about 2.5%, enviable for any lender anywhere, and I understand that's attributable to the fact that they qualify their people, and when there are problems, and people are inevitably going to have some problems, they spend the time to work it out with them. They're not handicapped by a bunch of monolithic bureaucrats or bureaucratic written regulations, and that gives the VA the ability to have such a low loss ratio. So I see my time's running out. I would ask any of the other members, the other four that I haven't asked questions to yet, you've got 36 seconds if any of you want to weigh in on or comment on that.
Congressman, I would invite the academics at the other end of the table to come to my bank, and I'll show them overregulation.
If we could, I'm going to go ahead and move to Mr. Sherman for 3 minutes, and then